Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books and marketing expert covering Ivy League colleges panic, reinstate SAT tests as woke students fail. Let's get into the story. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate you guys. Coming from Forbes, Brown becomes third Ivy League school reinstating standardized test requirement. It's not just Brown, it's also been Yale and it's also been Dartmouth. They understand now they really need students that are able to handle their curriculum. From the Brown Daily Herald, SAT, ACT scores more predictive of academic success at Ivy Plus schools than high school grades, new study suggests. Study builds on past findings that wealthy applicants have advantage at Ivy Plus admissions. And also from the Brown Daily Herald, Brown University to reinstate standardized test requirements for undergraduate admission. And the SATs are changing. They're going to be changing up the SATs so that really they're easier for students to be successful on them. Even with standardized tests, they're lowering the standards of the standardized test. The 5 most significant changes coming to the SAT in 2024. The biggest one is this adaptive change, where how you do in the beginning of the test will affect how difficult the rest of the questions are on the test. Yes, they really are making the test easier. Coming from Forbes, Brown becomes third Ivy League school reinstating standardized test requirement. Prospective college students applying to Brown University will once again have to submit standardized test scores for admissions, the university has announced this Tuesday. A committee examining the requirement determined it's a key indicator to predicting student success. Starting this year, Brown will again reinstate SAT or ACT scores for incoming classes beginning in the fall 2025 semester. Provost Francis Doyle, who served as co-chair for the committee examining the policy, said that standardized test scores were key indicators that help predict a student's ability to succeed and thrive in Brown's demanding academic environment. It really does no one any good to be put into a system that doesn't suit their abilities. It has nothing to do with diversity. It really has nothing to do with inclusion. But you have to at least show you can accomplish minimum levels of success on a standardized test. At some point, they do actually have to worry about the reputation of the schools and what the alumni think of the quality of the people that are coming out of the schools. It's those alumni that make the donations, and it's the alumni that represent the school once people leave and graduate. Doyle said the test scores will be considered in the context of each student's background, alongside other factors like grade point averages. The committee also promised to continue reviewing legacy admissions, but left the controversial policy favoring the children of alumni and professors in place for now. The school noted that legacy admissions declined by 30% over the last year, and legacy students only make up 8% of the class of 2027. The Brown Committee said that the recent test optional policy may have actually had unintended adverse outcomes at the 259-year-old Ivy League institution. According to the data analyzed by the committee, students from less advantaged backgrounds were frequently choosing not to submit test scores, when these scores could have actually helped them get accepted. Quote, strong testing, interpreted in the context of a student's background, may serve to demonstrate their ability to succeed at Brown, the committee wrote in a blog post, and the lack of scores may mean that admissions officers hesitate to admit them. And ultimately, it's about choosing between one student or another student. If they both have similar backgrounds and success in high school, but one has a higher standardized test score than the other, of course you should accept the student with the higher standardized test score. Like thousands of other American universities, Brown suspended the requirement for applicants to submit standardized test scores early in the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 after testing centers closed across the country. In 2022, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology became the first major elite college to reinstate the requirement. Dartmouth became the first Ivy League school to bring back the SAT on February 5th, while Yale followed suit on February 22nd. High school students this Saturday will begin taking a newly revamped SAT exam. The new test is 1 hour shorter and will be taken entirely online, the College Board first announced in 2022. Students will be allowed to use a calculator. I mean, they're making it easier and easier. We'll go over the changes in the SAT as well in another article. And a personal laptop or tablet, so students will be allowed to use a calculator and a personal laptop or tablet to help them with a test. The exam will still be graded on the same 1,600-point scale used in previous years. I haven't taken the new test. I took the old test a few years ago. I can't compare one test to the other test, but including a calculator and allowing you to use a laptop or a tablet making the test shorter. They're also making the questions shorter. It does feel like it's a dumbed down version of the test. Here are the 5 most significant changes coming to the SAT in 2024. It will have adaptive sections. The paper-based SAT took over 3 hours to complete because students must tackle questions from a wide range of difficulties. The new digital SAT will be streamlined, taking only a little over 2 hours to finish because it will be section adaptive. This means every student will start with a module of moderate difficulty. Those who perform well will go on to a more challenging second module, but those who don't will see an easier second section, which will affect scoring since the modules are weighted differently. It's important for students to try their very best on every question, since each one will have a significant impact on their score and will determine which module they'll move on to. Fortunately, the shorter test time should make endurance less of an issue. So they're shortening it, they're making it easier, and they're grading it essentially on a curve. They're giving you less demands if you're not as successful with the initial part of the test, so that the later part of the test will be easier to succeed on. Reading and writing passages will be shorter. While the current SAT has a few longer passages accompanied by several questions, each reading and writing text in the SAT will now feature a single question and will be no longer than 150 words. Many students may find it easier to focus on the reading material since it's broken up into smaller chunks instead of longer, harder to follow sections. But they'll also give you a calculator in case you need one. A calculator will be available throughout the math sections. On the paper SAT, there's a non-calculator mathematics section. Most students are excited to learn that they'll be able to use a calculator through the digital SAT, although you're still permitted to bring a calculator of your own. The SAT online program has a powerful graphing calculator that you can use at any point during the math section. Test takers will still be given scrap paper at testing centers, since writing out one's work is an excellent strategy for arriving at a correct answer. And here's the full story about Brown University returning to standardized tests. From the Brown Daily Herald, Brown University to reinstate standardized test requirements for undergraduate admission. Brown University will reinstate standardized testing requirements for most applicants to the college, beginning with the class of 2029. The change comes after the Ad Hoc Committee on Admissions Policies issued recommendations that the President, Christina Paxson, publicly adopted on Tuesday. Paxson also accepted the committee's suggestion that Brown continue to offer an early decision round in its application cycle, and said the university would consider community input and a range of complex questions as it evaluates preferences for legacy applicants. Along with her decision, the committee released an executive summary of their report that includes their recommendations and rationale. The committee was formed in September in the wake of the Supreme Court's decision to restrict race-conscious admission policies. Paxson charged the group with ensuring that the university was upholding its commitments to academic excellence, equity, access, and diversity in its admission practices. Throughout the summary, the committee continually revisited this bedrock principle, even with some contradicting sentiments. Brown will become the third Ivy League school after Dartmouth and Yale to again require all first-year applicants to submit a standardized test score as part of their application, with the exception of those who are unable to take the test. Transfer applicants, resumed undergraduate education applicants, and prospective student veterans will still enjoy a test-optional policy. The committee cited student academic performance at Brown as a main reason for acquiring the test, finding that higher test scores were correlated with higher grades at the university. Those who did not submit test scores had comparable academic performance to those that submitted low scores. The findings align with the results of a study released earlier this year by John Friedman, the chair of Brown's economics department and a member of the committee. The summary adds that there are unintended adverse outcomes of test-optional policies in the admissions process itself, potentially undermining the goal of increasing access. And that's them saying, look, if we have applicants who have not taken the standardized test or have not submitted the standardized test, and we have other applicants who have, the students with good scores on the standardized tests, at least up until now, until they've changed the standardized tests, the students who succeeded on them actually did better at the school. So if you're not going to accept everyone anyway, you may as well accept the people who have done well on the standardized tests. That's why we've always had standardized tests in the first place. It provides a level playing field. The committee acknowledged that those from well-resourced backgrounds tend to perform better on the exams, whether because of additional tutoring or other strategies. But Paxson accepted a committee suggestion to implement a testing in context campaign, which aims to promote Brown's policy of considering testing as one factor among many in a holistic review process. The committee added that test scores interpreted in the context of an applicant's background may actually benefit underrepresented students who admissions officers deem to have academic potential at Brown. Quote, the committee was concerned that some students from less advantaged backgrounds are choosing not to submit scores under the test optional policy when doing so would actually increase their chances of being admitted. Admission officers will often compare applicants' individual standardized test scores to overall test performances at that applicant's high school in order to contextualize their academic performance. Doyle said that high schools often communicate this overall test performance to the office administration or report it publicly. This decision ends the test optional policy that Brown has practiced since the 2020-2021 application cycle. 40% of applicants to Brown chose not to submit test scores during that period, but that proportion decreases for those enrolled. Only 24% of students did not submit a score in the 2022-2023 application cycle, according to a Herald poll of enrolled first-year students. The committee did not reach a consensus in evaluating whether the university should end its preferences for applicants who are children of alumni or Brown staff members. Instead, they have deferred any decision until administrators can ask members of the community, including faculty, staff, alumni, and students, to provide input on Brown's current practice of preferences for applicants with family connections. Doyle said the committee has not determined what the outreach plan would be and that the committee will be looking for guidance from the president on her next steps. Conventional wisdom holds that when children attend the same college as their parents, the family is more likely to donate to the institution, though there's little research to back the claim. Well, that is what alumni donations are all about, so of course that happens. In weighing the advantages of legacy admissions, Doyle said that the effects to the donor base were a factor in the committee's discussions. He added that students whose parents attended Brown tend to be exceptionally well qualified, with academic records that are stronger than that of average matriculants. The committee also cited the tendency of legacy students to enroll at higher rates once admitted, pointing to the sense of community and loyalty among Brown graduates that the policy fosters. Committee members did address concerns of socioeconomic disparities, writing that removing legacy preferences could lead to somewhat more diversity in the group of admitted students. In another study, Friedman found that legacy admissions is the largest factor driving the overrepresentation of high-income students at Ivy Plus colleges. If the university were concerned primarily with socioeconomic diversity, it would make sense to eliminate this practice, Paxson said in an interview with the Herald earlier this month. Why should that be a priority for them, to have socioeconomic diversity? Just have students come to your school that deserve the opportunity because they've earned it based on merit, no matter what their circumstances were, and give them a chance to succeed and become part of your community. Brown consistently ranks among the lowest of the Ivies in the percentage of students receiving financial aid. The university also ranks 230th of 286 schools, again the lowest in the Ivy League, for the share of students receiving full Pell Grants, according to a New York Times analysis. The committee also put the recommendation in the context of the affirmative action decision, writing that some members stressed the importance of fairness to the more recent and more diverse graduates whose children might benefit, given that their parents enjoyed an affirmative action admissions policy. Past Herald polls have found that the population of legacy students contains a higher proportion of white students compared with the general student body. Legacy students were also less likely to receive financial aid than their non-legacy counterparts. This obsession with race in society now really is depraved. We should look at everyone as equal. Everyone is a human being. It doesn't matter what their skin color is, what their gender is, what their sexual preference is. It's one of the reasons I like to do these stories, to make sure I have a voice stating things that we all know are true, that people are people and we should not be discriminating against anyone. Everyone deserves a chance. No excuses, no nonsense. Stand on your own merit. Quote, the issue of admission preferences raises complicated questions about equity and access, about merit and unearned advantage, adding that coming to a recommendation requires further deliberation and reflection. Approximately 8% of the class of 2027 are legacy students, and about 1 to 2% of all students are children of staff members. Early decision holds strong. After considering a non-restrictive, non-binding early action admissions policy, the university decided to continue offering a binding early decision policy, as eliminating it may place Brown at a slight disadvantage in enrolling very high qualified students who are subsequently admitted to other institutions through regular decision. High rates of yield, or the percentage of accepted students who ultimately enroll, are often regarded as advantages for universities hoping to confirm the composition and size of their first-year class. Early decision provides institutions with this certainty by enrolling 100% of the admitted early cohort. Those who are accepted under early decision are contractually obligated to attend Brown, raising concerns among some critics that forcing families from lower socioeconomic backgrounds to commit to one school would prevent them from comparing financial aid offers from others. The committee rebuffed these concerns for students applying to Brown, noting that applicants are given corresponding financial aid awards whether they apply in the regular or early decision cycles, and that online financial help aid calculators help students and families estimate the cost of attendance at Brown. I would think the colleges could just focus on giving people viable educations. The idea that they're going to remake society by who they give an advantage to when they let them into the school, it just doesn't make sense. And of course, it's very discriminatory. This is what the Supreme Court was trying to avoid. You can't remake society with policies. When asked how they could create a diverse cohort of admitted applicants with a less diverse applicant pool, Doyle said that the size of the application pool means that we can identify a strong, diverse cohort of highly qualified students in a way that's guided by our unwavering commitment to access and diversity. And here's how they were able to figure out that people who actually succeed on standardized test scores will do better than those who can't succeed on standardized test scores. From the Brown Herald, SAT-ACT scores more predictive of academic success at Ivy Plus schools than high school grades, new study suggests. Study builds on past findings that wealthy applicants have advantage in Ivy Plus admissions. A study released this January by research group Opportunity Insights found that standardized test scores, such as SAT and ACT scores, are more predictive of academic success at Ivy Plus colleges than high school grades. That study, led by Professor and Chair of Economics John Friedman, suggested that ACT and SAT scores may have more value for admissions processes than previously understood, and comes as the university's ad hoc committee on admissions policies reconsiders Brown's test-optional admissions, legacy, and early decision policies. Friedman, a member of the committee, released a separate study with Opportunity Insights last summer, concluding that wealthy applicants have an advantage in the admissions process at Brown and other Ivy Plus universities. Well, wealthy applicants have families that can put resources into their children. So yes, they do have an advantage, and that is why parents will invest in their children. This has nothing to do with race. This just has to do with families prioritizing investing in the family unit. The latest study reached three main conclusions. First, students with higher SAT and ACT scores also tend to achieve higher college GPAs. Second, high school GPAs are poor predictors of college GPAs. So when they figure out that high school GPAs are poor predictors of college GPAs, what they're figuring out is they've wasted the time of many, many students who have gone into a college setting that isn't appropriate for them. That's why merit matters, and that's why standardized testing matters, and that's why people accomplishing things based on their own ability is absolutely crucial. It's more important than trying to develop socioeconomic diversity. Lastly, students with similar standardized test scores also have similar college GPAs, even if they come from different socioeconomic backgrounds. Researchers also found that students who did not submit test scores had relatively lower college GPAs compared to those who did submit test scores. According to Friedman, the data does not support the concern that test scores are artificially inflated for students from more well-resourced backgrounds, he said. Instead, he suggested, differences in test scores were a reflection of broader disparities in education. Others have made a similar point. Raj Chetty, a Harvard economics professor and researcher with Opportunity Insights, said in a New York Times article that the most recent study strengthens the argument that the disparities in SAT scores are a symptom, not a cause, of inequality in the U.S. Who would think that a disparity in SAT scores would actually be a cause of inequality? I don't know what these people have been thinking, but they're way off base. Nick Lee, who co-leads the Admissions and Access Committee under the student group Students for Educational Equity, shared appreciation for Friedman's research, but said that, quote, looking at this study singularly will not provide a holistic take. Many of the students who can prepare for these tests are also the same students who have proper academic resources and tutoring available throughout their life. While standardized test scores can be predictive in college GPA, these tests will still actively screen out lower income and under-resourced students who are unable to prepare for them in the same manner. Students from higher socioeconomic backgrounds generally achieve higher test scores, Lee added, referencing a 2013 study which concluded that family income has substantial impacts on SAT scores. Academic researchers are not going to be able to find any method or any way that a college can substitute in a few years what good parents do for their children over a lifetime. Good parents emphasize with their children early on, look, you need an education. You've got to get a network. You've got to get a career. You need to finish your college education. It's incredibly important. And then they make sure that children do their homework. And then they let children know it's always worth it to put in the effort to continue to build on your educational success. This is what good parents do. Colleges and universities can never replace good parents, particularly a good traditional two-parent family. No insult to anyone, but you're messing with children's lives here. You're messing with people's entire careers. You're messing with people's opportunities, and it's generational. The reason that traditional values of hard work and two-parent families that can contribute to children's great future upbringing has worked for generations is because it works. People need to take an interest in their children, and while parents can't do everything to make sure that their children will succeed, they can definitely do a lot. And it's clear it makes a difference. There will never be a policy at a university. There will never be a simpler version of a test that will ever take the place of good parents who are focused on a good future for their children and their grandchildren. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.